welcome here. I know people are going to be kind of slow to come in. I just wanted to get started so that I can do my introductions. So hello and welcome to the North Seattle College Art Gallery's virtual visiting artist lecture series. Thrilled to have artist Yvonne Ferguson with us today. I'm Amanda Knowles, the coordinator of the North Seattle College Art Gallery, and I teach printmaking and drawing in the art department at North. I'm lucky to work with Julie Graber, who is my assistant in the art gallery, who's letting folks in here today and is working behind the scenes. We are both supported by Selena, Alex, Emery, and Rory, the work study students in the art gallery, and we wouldn't be able to be here without them. This is the second of our visiting artist lectures for the 2024-2025 school year. We started these talks in 2020 and have well over 30 lectures available on the North Seattle College Art Gallery YouTube channel. I want to let you know early on that we have live transcript available for those of you who want it. It can be turned on by clicking the show subtitle button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For those of you who don't want it or find it distracting, I don't think you need to put hide subtitle, but use it if you wish, hide it if you wish. But we want to make sure we have that and people can access it if they need it. We start these lectures with land and labor acknowledgements. So I'm going to share my screen. We're in a strange position at the moment. Our college leaders are working to sit down with area tribal leaders to discuss a meaningful way to acknowledge and the importance of what it means to be settlers, as well as occupiers, descendants, and inheritors of systems which sought to eradicate the original caretakers of this land. We're nothing without these folks, and we want to build a society where we are thoughtful about how we show that we stand in solidarity with the sovereignty, cultural heritage, and lives of Indigenous, Native, and First Nations peoples. Support them with their actions and have these words be meaningful. So I will share what we have. I know this is sort of going against that. North Seattle College acknowledges that we occupy the lands of the Coast Salish peoples, the descendants of the first peoples of this region, a people whose cultures endure and are valued. Without this land and these cultures, we would not have access to this gathering, dialogue, and learning space. We take this moment to honor and thank the original caretakers of this land, their ancestors, and their descendants who are still here. We encourage participants here today to consider our responsibilities as we stand in solidarity with the sovereignty, cultural heritage, and lives of Native, Indigenous, and First Nations peoples. We also are going to do a labor acknowledgement. We also pause to recognize and acknowledge the labor that created the United States and from which we all benefit. We remember that our nation is built on the labor of enslaved people who were forcibly brought to the U.S. from the African continent, and we recognize the continued contribution of their survivors. We acknowledge immigrant labor and recognize that voluntary forced and prison labor contribute to the building and ongoing maintenance of our nation. We acknowledge all unpaid caregiving labor. Additionally, we acknowledge the critical importance of the work towards racial equity that continues across this country in response to racial injustice and generations of structural racism against Black and Indigenous people and other communities of color. As we go from acknowledgement to deed, we know that it is not enough to just give a hollow acknowledgement and have to be sure that we are taking action. We show you here what actions North Seattle College and the NSC Art Department are taking to support BIPOC individuals and institutions and to be held accountable. Thank you. I want to just say a couple other things. Extracurricular 4, the NSC Art Instructor and Tech exhibition is currently up in the gallery. We hope you take time to come and see what folks who teach and assist in the art department are doing in their own creative practice. It's a beautiful show, so come and see it. Gallery hours are Monday through Thursday, 11 to 5, and Fridays, 11 to 2. Our next virtual visiting artist lecture is in late February. You can check out our Facebook, Instagram, and our website and flyers around campus to find out what is going on in the gallery and who will be talking and when. We urge you to visit our website for more information. We will post our links in the chat just now. Julie will do that. You can sign up for emails by contacting us at nscartgallery@seattlecolleges.edu. I want to remind you that the NSC Art Gallery is honored to have support from the college, student leadership, and from all of you here today. Thank you for attending these events and sharing them with people that you know will enjoy them. Keep visiting the gallery, stopping by and to say hello, and building the art community at North. Thank you. On to the reason that we are all gathered here today. Yay! We are incredibly excited to have Yvonne Ferguson here virtually to talk with us about her work today. Yvonne lives and works in Florida. After graduating from Gainesville High School, she went on to study art history at Virginia Wesleyan College in Norfolk, Virginia. She has shown her work at the Center of Women's Studies at the University of Florida, the University of Florida Institute of Black Culture, Black Artists Showcase, the Civic Media Center, Wild Iris Bookstore, Il Sol Studio in Tampa, Merge Culture Studio, Matheson History Museum, the Rogers Art Gallery, and the Cotton Club Museum and Cultural Center. She has been the featured guest artist on Artlanta and Articentric? Okay, online art magazines. Her work has been chosen as a backdrop to the online news source Blavity.com. In 2022, Yvonne participated in the Existentialism of Blackness artist residency at Rogers Gallery in Las Vegas, Nevada. Yvonne has given several artist talks and presentations, has participated in live painting events and art festivals where she has won awards. She was the featured live painting artist at the Gasparilla Music Festival while painting The Roots live during their performance. Yvonne has completed 3 murals for the city of Gainesville, one for the Cotton Club Museum in Gainesville, and she designed the incredible James Baldwin mural that hangs on the top floor of the renovated North Seattle College Library. This mural was painted by the students enrolled in the 2024 mural class taught by Kelda Martinson. Yvonne celebrates the beauty, history, culture, and people of the African diaspora through her online gallery, Diasporic Pigments. I will hand you over to Yvonne, but before I do, I want to let the audience know that we'll be taking questions in the chat today, where we'll be gathering them for a Q&A at the end of the talk. Yvonne may not be following the chat, but if questions or comments arise during the talk, please write them in the chat, and we will hopefully get to all of them. As usual, we will be sending a transcript of the chat to Yvonne after the talk, so if you want to comment on the work and her words, please do. But you might be specific about what you are commenting on, as she will see your words after the talk. But I urge you to support her, her ideas, and her work in the chat. Welcome, Yvonne.
Hey, everybody. Let me go ahead and start sharing my presentation with you guys. Okay, so I recently moved to Virginia, and I packed a bunch of books. I have a huge collection of books, like over 600 books. And so I had to pick what I was going to take with me to actively read. And the first 3 things that I grabbed were Nothing Personal, James Baldwin, Just Above My Head, and Begin Again by Eddie Glade, which I feel like is just the perfect springboard into kind of getting an understanding of Baldwin's stance or perspective of America. And it's actually what I was reading while I was working on the presentation. So this quote is from his book, and this is in regards to responsibility. Not everything is lost. Responsibility cannot be lost. It can only be abdicated. If one refuses abdication, one begins again. And I felt like that was a fitting way to describe James Baldwin and the many phases of his evolution that we got to see through his work and through debate and through interviews. And so this is my presentation on the mural for Jimmy. Okay, so we always like to, as a family, give thanks first and acknowledge, our elders. So definitely did not get to this point by myself. So thanks first to Sharon Burney, my mom, Momager, who's also watching, Willie Burney, my grandfather, Tamisha Ferguson, my sister, Shaka Zulu Burney, who's sitting next to me, you'll meet shortly, North Seattle College for the opportunity, the Art Council, Project Baldwin, the library staff, the art department, facilities team, particularly to Kelda for being super patient with me. Amanda knows you've been super, super patient with me in responding and everything like that. So, and the community at North Seattle College as a whole. I don't know, are they any of the students that actually painted the mural here?
Uh, they are coming or watching the recording. I know for sure I've heard from a few of them. So you can shout them out. They'll hear it.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Okay. And sorry if I mispronounce names. Etta Devich, Anika Dixon, Tamsin Gilly, Mateo Grousum, Ida Henriksen, Kat Kongor, Alana Luray, Selena Leonard, Xavier Lopez, Sarah Lortz, Ryan Madsen, Amai Matthews, Nicole Torres, Harry Yu, and Bibi Zhu. Thank you so much for creating my mural and bringing it to life on a scale that I can't even fathom. But yes, thank you. Thank you for your hands, and Kelda, thank you for your direction. All right, and now the boring stuff, because I really don't like talking about me. I was born in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. I'm a Floridian, very glad to have recently escaped. But I've always drawn, I've always gravitated towards the arts. When I was younger, my mom would get me coloring books and I would color them and then steal her college notebooks because she was also in school at the same time, and I would redraw the coloring books and color them again. So I've always kind of gravitated towards creating, destroying, and creating again. I think being able to paint keeps me alive in a way. It's like my parachute. I'm very passionate about the diaspora and the Black experience, and also dismantling the monolith of Blackness, just because we exist as a people in so many different ways. I know, there are cultural stereotypes about races, and some of those are true, but it locks us into a narrative that minimizes the breadth of who we are. And so that's part of my focus of my work, is to kind of break down that monolith and also to share the nuance of the experience of being Black in this country and in this time. A lot of my work hinges on the principle of Sankofa, which is a West African Adinkra symbol, which is a crane with the egg sometimes on its back. And the translation of Sankofa is that it's not taboo to go back and fetch what's at risk of being lost, which means your culture, your people, your history, all of that is to keep bringing it forward. So for newer generations and also for perpetuation of legacy. Okay, so this video is pretty succinct about my experience. I grew up in a home with exclusively Black art, Black music, Black art, Black books. So I grew up in a way in which my Blackness was centered in my experience and not other than. I got my first apartment and I needed art. I couldn't find any Black art. I would go to try to get like posters, but it was always like Marilyn Monroe and Audrey Hepburn, and every now and then I could find like a Billie Holiday. I was talking to my mom about it. I'm like, can't find any artwork. I need some Black art. My mom was just like, why don't you just make it? And so I did, and I kept going, and my friends would come over and they would be like, I need some artwork too. Can you make that? And I just kind of extrapolated. I was doing people that affected the way that I view the world as a woman of color. I did a lot of Nina Simone, listened to a lot of that growing up, James Baldwin, Malcolm X. I've had the pleasure of interacting with a lot of people who unfortunately were raised in a way where they're not centered in their own experience. I got the opposite end of that. I got so much Black love that I'm just like imbuing it on everyone else around me. And so I do think it's important as a Black person to grow up and be around Black art and Black music and Black thought, because you do need to be centered in an experience that mirrors your own to be grounded in this world. That video was actually shot for me during my residency in Las Vegas, the Rogers Foundation, and centered around the show, which I titled The Existentialism of Blackness, which very briefly was my conversation about the intersection of the prison industrial complex, iconography, and redemption and humanity. So what I did was I took a bunch of mug shots of different people and I paired them up. So for example, one of the pairs was Mike Tyson with Brittany Griner, who had both had domestic abuse arrests. I had Tupac Shakur and Lisa Left Eye Lopez. Tupac was arrested for perpetuation of domestic violence, and Lisa Lopez acted out as a response to being a victim of domestic violence. Another pairing I had was Angela Davis, who I paired with Old Dirty Bastard from Wu-Tang, because I wanted to have a conversation about her criticism of the prison industrial complex and the government, and his manipulation of the government for his own gain and benefit. And so we had Dr. Crystal Falima come in from the University of Kentucky and led a conversation to lay some context about the prison industrial complex, iconography in the Black experience, and kind of lead the discussion on what happens with a person and their contributions to culture and history when their legacy is marred by an arrest. Who we are as a people when we deny people redemption. So it was my way of kind of turning a critical eye on cancel culture and what it really means to be redeemed. So that was a lot of fun. Okay, so how do we get here? I stopped doubting myself for a moment. Far too often, I've listened to artists pontificate on the exact moment they ascended to the realm of professional art. This is not that. My story hinges on the precipice of a moment and what can happen when we choose to lean into fear and hope simultaneously. I was recently quit a job before I found this artist call. I was working at a place where my Blackness and my autonomy was a threat to the status quo. And I dealt with some abuse, some gaslighting, gang stalking, and all of these things, and it started to impact my health. I was in the ER all the time. I was having chest pains, getting tests, all this crazy stuff. My resting heart rate was like 200. And my mom and my sister sat me down and they're like, you have to stop doing this. You know, you have to quit. And I've always had a job. My mom was always the kind of person who was like, you don't quit a job unless you have another job. And so I struggled with the idea of leaving. And my mom, again, who's amazing, really coached me into going all in on art and doing it full time. So while I was looking through artist calls, I was scrolling and I was thinking, oh, you know, I don't have enough experience for this. I'm not going to apply for that. Oh, I'm not good enough for this. I'm not going to apply for that. You know, like kind of talking myself out of everything. Oh, this application fee is crazy. You know, I can't apply for everything. You know, I've got limited funds. And so I talked myself out of a lot. And as I was scrolling, almost kind of mindlessly, I saw James Baldwin's name and I stopped. And I clicked it. And the artist call read like it was made for me. I saw myself in the artist call. I saw all the things that I love about James Baldwin. I saw all the things that I love about his work. And I saw all the paintings that I made of him before. And it really made me feel like, all right, I can do this one. I can take a shot at this one. And then I was like, nah. And I talked myself out of it again. And I had just recently, my sister transitioned. My sister passed. And she used to always say, why do it big when you can do it jumbo large? And so I thought about her and I was like, I'm going to do a jumbo large, you know, this one time. And so I applied and it was terrifying. I think it's easy to underestimate how vulnerable it feels creating and sharing as an artist when we think about our worth as creators. And I used to think being vulnerable was a weakness. This experience made me feel like it's a strength. I learned how to trust feeling your way into what's right for you, creatively. And so I hit apply and I was like, well, we'll see what happens. You know, I can't explain the feeling that I had when I got the notification that I made it through the first round. Coincidentally, I felt like I was gonna at least make it that way because all of the paintings that I submitted were paintings of James Baldwin because I've painted him so many times. So I was like, well, they know I can paint James Baldwin, so at minimum, I should be able to get, you know, somewhere. But I read that email like 3 or 4 times and I had I couldn't fathom, you know, I was like, they're not talking about me, but like, we'll keep going, you know. And so going through that process was just growing, and scary, and fun, all at the same time. All right, so let's go next. While reading Begin Again, I came across this quote from James Baldwin, and it's about his legacy on his work. And that's super important to me. Okay, so basically it says, I pray I've done my work when I've gone from here and all the turmoil through the wreckage and rubble and through whatever. When someone finds themselves digging through the ruins, I pray that somewhere in that wreckage they'll find me. Somewhere in that wreckage that they use something I left behind. This is a quote from The Price of the Ticket, and it's referenced in Begin Again. And I feel like that is apt as far as the beginning of the work of excavating Jimmy and condensing him into a small space, you know, succinctly, which I feel like is challenging with someone of his caliber. But this is essentially what we've done as a group in the practice of Sankofa, is bringing Jimmy and all his complicated aspects to life. So there's something about Jimmy, finding warmth in all those strangers. All Those Strangers is also a bit of a biography about James Baldwin, which I heard your library has. So if you haven't read that, please do check that out. But these are the questions that I asked myself when beginning to construct the mural. How best does one summarize another person? What collection of images glimpses the entirety of one's being? And what single quote can best summarize a person's philosophy or life's work? And I don't know that any of those things can be true about a single person. I don't know that I believe that you can summarize the entirety of a person, perhaps their work or their intent, but I just don't think it's possible. But we took a stab at it with the mural. When I think about James Baldwin, my first experience with him was reading Giovanni's Room, which is a bit of a dense read for a high schooler, closeted queer person, I think. And the emotive quality of that book was almost hypnotic. And then I came into this rabbit hole of, you know, reading James. I particularly read a lot of nonfiction. So the fiction that I do read is him or Octavia Butler or Toni Morrison or something like that. I find a lot of comfort in listening to his debates. So I read a lot of interviews, I listen to a lot of his debates and lectures. And I think in listening to those, you can gather a bit of an idea about his person. I think it's very clear how he feels about the lie of America, and the hypocrisy of the moral superiority of what America is. But taking all of those aspects of him and condensing them down was a bit daunting. And so I tried to think of the mural as a journey. And when you're learning about Baldwin, for a lot of people, your introduction to him is around the exodus from the United States to Europe. And so I thought it would be best to start with his passport, which is also like the primary start point of the mural. He spent a lot of time in Istanbul. This image is actually him at his typewriter in Istanbul, which is like one of his favorite apartments. He spent a lot of time in Paris, which he loved there. So there's Eiffel Tower there, and lots of conferences in Paris. Lots of time in Brooklyn, which is home for him for all intents and purposes. This is where his family is from. And so I tried to translate his travels into chapters, because I feel like his travel directly influenced his perspective of America and the American experience, or the Black American experience. And so that's where I wanted to focus a lot. The palette started initially with the furniture that was in the library. So after, getting selected for the mural, we got to see pictures of the space, and there was a yellow couch and I think an orange couch, and I was like, okay. And I like gray. So I was like, okay, gray is a good background to work from, but how can I create warmth and energy without being distracting, right? Because people are there to work. I mean, I think of a library as a playground, because I was instead of ice cream truck, when we grew up, we had the bookmobile. And so I've always thought of a library as a big playground. Like I'd rather go to a library than like Best Buy or amusement park. So for me, I get excited when I'm around a lot of books, but I realize that people do go there to study and stuff like that. So I didn't want to make it like so energetic that something is constantly pulling your eye away, but I wanted it to be something that would draw your eye in and move your eye around. And the best way to combine the coldness, which I think is really a very abject kind of perspective that he has on life and race, with warmth, which is his passion, his love for Black people, his love for art, his respect for his craft, was to combine the warm palette with the cool palette. And so starting with the yellow and orange, we kind of expanded and then added the deeper, turquoise and phthalo green, and seafoam is one of my favorite colors, so that had to go in there. And I think what came out of it was a balance of warmth and coolness, and also a balance of energetically what aligns with the way that I perceive Baldwin. Okay, just above my head, which is also I'm currently reading right now, is another book reference. So, the impact of intentionality, separating art and artists. So I think a big question that I avoid a lot is, can you separate the art from the artist, right? Can we separate the work that they produce from their problematic selves? And I ebb and flow back and forth between, yes, we can, and no, we can't. And every now and then I'll retract on that. But I don't believe that intentionality can be separated from anything that we do as a person. And so intent has to be the foundation of where we create from. Trying to narrow down the aspects of James Baldwin that I found fascinating was very difficult. I think his features are beautiful, even though I've heard him say many times in interviews that he was ugly or told he was ugly. I think he doesn't fit the standard of beauty, but I love cheekbones, I love gaps, I love wide noses, I love expressive features, and I think his smile is beautiful. And so I wanted to include an image of him smiling because you don't really get to see, one, in general, Black people openly experiencing joy, particularly men. And I think his smile was just so bright and so big that it kind of drew me in. And so a lot of his work is heavy, and a lot of his lectures and debates are super heavy. And so I wanted to have some lightness. Some of the questions that I asked were, how do I feel about libraries, which I kind of let you guys know already, the aspects of Baldwin that I'm presenting to viewers, which is basically his travels and his trajectory and evolution as a creative. How can I affirm a viewer that is familiar with Baldwin? So for people that are already familiar with Baldwin, they're familiar with his smile. They're familiar with his abruptness. They're familiar with his stance on America and the condition, the sociological condition of America. But I think for me, affirming people that are familiar with Baldwin was to recreate him in a way that was fun. And so I think this palette did a lot of the heavy lifting for me with that. Inspiring curiosity from a viewer that was unfamiliar for me was to show a snapshot of all of these different aspects of his person, from Brooklyn to Istanbul to Paris, all while being a Black man and queer and traveling the world and doing these things and holding space in all of these ways that the world did not affirm, I think is valiant. And so I hope that's what was conveyed for people that were unfamiliar with James Baldwin. There's an aspect of creating as a Black person that requires responsibility in considering amplifying unheard voices. And I think that's just an unavoidable cost of being a Black creative. I think it's easy to shy away from the responsibility of, I'm not a role model, I just paint, or I'm just an athlete. Don't look to me for, advice and all of those things. But I don't think you can shy away from the responsibility of being critical and thoughtful of your own culture when you share it. And so as a queer person, I just find it fascinating and magical that Baldwin was able to exist openly with his sexuality and his preferences and his body in the time frame that he lived in. And so I think even just saying his name or sharing images of him is amplifying enough. I just don't really know how you summarize, a man like that. I hope my impact for staff, students, and visitors with the mural was to be inspiring, to be encouraging, to be bold. I believe that the palette is bold, and just that there's no wrong way to exist. My responsibility as a Black woman, artist, and activist. It wasn't until when this mural was concluded that I accepted that my activism is with paintbrushes. I think this happened a lot during COVID, during the peak of the Black Lives Matter movement, is that people felt like if you weren't out on the streets protesting, that you weren't a good activist. And not everybody is the type of person that's capable of being out in the street protesting. Some people are otherly abled and can't risk exposure to a whole bunch of other people and their germs. And a lot of people, there are people that can't afford to get arrested again that have been out protesting for decades. And so I think it's new for me to accept that my activism doesn't have to look like someone else's, and that I can take the work that I do to the scale that protesting does. And so I think that's kind of standard for artists that are in tune with their culture, is that you become an activist. You become the voice or an arm for the expression of people that are unable to or don't have the capacity or weren't aware that their voice mattered. And so that is my goal as an artist. And to a degree, I believe that's an aspect of Baldwin's work. All right, learning on the job. The 5-second rule, which does not always apply to food. It takes about 5 seconds for your brain to start talking you out of doing something, which I went through many times before I actually hit submit on my application for the mural. Having no experience doesn't mean you're incapable. It just means that you don't have any experience. I had never designed anything digitally before doing this. This is actually my first artist call. I had never applied for anything before doing this. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew it was important. And I knew, one, if I got lost, Kelda would bail me out. And two, that if my intentions were there and my intentions were genuine, then the product would come out amazing. So I like free things as far as art tools because art tools are expensive. So I downloaded Adobe Fresco because I don't have Apple, so I couldn't get Procreate. And Adobe Fresco is basically like the same thing. It crashes a lot. It's a little annoying depending on how many layers you have, but for free, it's tolerable. Pixel calculator, and I put the link there because I hope you guys use it, because when it came time to convert and scale my image to the space, all the math that my math teachers told me I would use in life, I was like, okay, this is what they were talking about. I had no idea. So I found a pixel calculator that would calculate what my inches from pixels would be. And I think that thing is just amazing. I spent about 180 hours working on this design. Get comfortable, get a nice chair, get you some water, some snacks. My cat was rotting with me in bed the whole time. But yeah, just get comfortable. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to adjust things. Don't be afraid to add things, remove things. I think the space that an artist creates in has to be a safe space without judgment. Because I think as artists, and this could be just me, but we're super critical of ourselves. And so I would like start and I would like draw, his nose and I'd be like, oh no, and then erase it and start over. But sometimes you kind of just have to keep going with things and see where they take you. And so I tackled the mural like one piece at a time and then figured out how to put them all together. But fresco and the pixel calculator really were a lifesaver for me. I do hope you guys use those. And ignore the 5-second rule. If you want to do something, just do it. The worst that can happen is it doesn't align with you, and that may be a good thing. Okay, so what I've been up to. So at the same time that I got the acceptance for my mural design, I actually got my first grant. So we've got the ball rolling now as far as applying for things. So my first grant was through Spark 352, which is a facet of the University of Florida, and the Mellon Foundation, which is, I guess, is the money train. They just have money. They're all over the place. So we used the funding to create a mural for the Cotton Club Museum, which is basically honoring the establishment's history on the Chitlin Circuit. So in Gainesville, Florida, and I believe this was in the 30s, a woman named Sarah McKnight bought a bar. And this was during segregation. So it was, there's white bars, there's color bars. And so she was like, I'm gonna name it after the Cotton Club in New York. So she had her bar and she had her stage, and she had so many people come through there. James Brown, Ella Fitzgerald, B.B. King, Bo Diddley, so many people matriculated through there. As a kid, my elementary school was down the street from this building. And as a kid, it was abandoned and dilapidated. And so we thought it was a monster house. And so we just assumed that Freddy Krueger lived there or something like that. And so to be able to go back into the museum, to add my artwork to it, to have children from the Caring and Sharing Learning Center, 2nd through 5th grade class, work with me on the mural there, which was wild. I know how I felt having my work created by other artists, but these little kids with their hands tearing this mural up, at first I was so frustrated, because I'm so like orderly, and I'm like, color this color right here, and they're like, all right, what over here, I like this color here. And so the mural started to become something else, and I enjoyed that. After the first day I was kind of like, it is what it is. This is evolved, and so that was a lot of fun. So the focus of the Unapologetic Volume 2 was about the censorship of Blackness. So I'd have portraits of Fred Hampton, James Baldwin, of course, Toni Morrison, Harriet Tubman, Gil Scott-Heron, Malcolm X, Shirley Chisholm, Nina Simone, Tupac Shakur, Stokely Carmichael, and Eartha Kitt. And then basically what I did was impose this color wave that would basically come on the TV whenever there'd be a censorship on live television, and use that as an analogy for censorship in the Black experience. On the portraits where it's opaque, it basically just means that their censorship didn't result in a loss of life. So Tupac was censored to the point in which he ended up being murdered. Malcolm X, obviously. There's a combination of opaque and transparent on James Baldwin just because of his queerness being so censored, because of the time frame he existed in. And so that's just my collection. And let's go to the next one.
We're trying to get Yvonne to do a mural on the wall. We want to put up a mural of some of the singers that we're here, like B.B. King and James Brown.
So let me get back in touch with you all about that. Our program is community based.
Yeah.
And these are the kind of projects that we look at. We don't look.
Unapologetic Volume 2, the censorship of Blackness, is a part of a cumulative project funded from a grant from Spark 352.
Caring and Sharing came in here on 10. These kids came through the door with all the opinions, all the questions, all the hands on everything. I had to accept that my chosen tools to fight racism are paintbrushes. And so my activism is to give voice to all of these people. The colors that are imbued on each one, I don't know if some of you guys might be too young to remember when on TV, when there would be oops, and then put the little censor screen, hold on, so this is what that is. This was my way to give voice to what it means to be centered as a Black person. I don't ever want to be an artist that's inaccessible. Will I take millions of dollars for my work? Yes. But will I still sell $20 prints? Yes. So that's a clip that Spark 352 put together about the grant. This is actually the digital mock-up that I did of the mural for the Cotton Club Museum. That the palette for the James Baldwin mural I'm just enamored with, so I'll probably use it for a few more things. But yeah, so, and I guess now we'll leave space for questions. But before we do that, I wanted to say thank you. And this is Shaka Zulu Bernie. This is my cat who rots with me while I'm working.
Yay, thank you so much. I really love how you shared all of your thinking through of the James Baldwin mural, of, you know, and how you kind of go about that, because everybody just, we never see that, right? For artists, people just think, oh, they made this thing. No, there was like so much intention behind it, and so I'm really appreciative that you showed us that you parted the curtain and we could see in a little bit. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's
Are there
see.
people who would like to? There's a lot of nice stuff happening in the chat, so we'll definitely send that on to you, so you don't even have to.
Would you like me to stop sharing my screen, or?
Sure. Yeah, maybe that's a good plan.
Okay.
Are
All
there
right.
people who want to ask some questions?
Yeah. Let's see if I can get this stuff in this chat, see what's going on in here. Oh, thank you. I love my mom. Oh, thank you, Karen.
Zola actually brings up that when you do make it to Seattle, to contact her. She's a really good person to contact about that. But we also have some contacts that we would love to get you involved in. So yeah, we're excited. If you are ever here, just give us a ring.
I definitely give you guys a heads up before I head that way. I still can't wait to see it in person. I think it's going to be hard for me to get a grasp of the scale of the mural without like actually physically being there, but I can't wait to see it.
And it integrates so well into the space. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it looked like a snug fit. Oh, thank you, Caroline.
Caroline's one of our librarians, and so gets to see that piece
Oh,
all the time.
nice. Hopefully you don't get bored of it.
I don't think it's going to happen. Oh yeah, what's happening next for you in Virginia? Asks Karen.
So we're applying for more things. I'm applying everywhere. At this point, I'm just kind of shooting my shot everywhere I can. I think, who was it? Jessie Reyes. I saw her say something about failure. People were asking her about failure, and she said, fail faster. And so I think as an artist, it's hard to get comfy with no's. But I think I'm just trying to get used to seeing the no as something that doesn't align with me at that given moment and accepting that. So the plan is I'm already scheming on Unapologetic Volume 2, which will be centered around woke women and words, which is like, is basically my middle finger to DeSantis and all his book censoring, which I'm sure, you know, as librarians, guys are like, oof. But it's going to be centered around Ntozake Shange, Octavia Butler, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Toni Morrison, and just about a conversation about what it means to be unapologetically Black and to share your experience as a Black person unapologetically amidst being like kind of whitewashed and toned down for comfortability. So that's oh yeah, thanks, Mom. So I had I can't remember her name. I wonder if she's here, but she came to one of my shows. She came to Volume 1 and Volume 2 in Gainesville, Florida, and her sister lives in Seattle. And so she actually went to visit the mural. I think, was it right after the dedication. So I got good feedback on it.
So good.
Oh, yay, cool. I'm so
Well,
excited.
I know the whole community's here to like tell you the whole thing.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't think you really get like and maybe that's just me. I have a hard time like receiving praise. So usually when people are telling me stuff, I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, thank you, bye. But to have people feel good about seeing the work, I think is what's most important for me as a creative.
I just want to say thank you again, Yvonne. I'll never stop thanking you, but it was just such a pleasure working with you through this process. And when we crafted the call, and I'll speak for all of our council, we each have such a deep care and love of the campus and for art, and it feels so meaningful and precious in a way. And we just put it out there and try to craft it in hopes that it's a seed that the right person will pick up, but we never have any guarantee of that happening. And so when we got your application back, I mean, I think we were equally floored and amazed that it found you and that you found it. So there's just something really, really magical about that. And you saw it right away and acknowledged that right away, which I think just made for an amazing experience. I mean, there was already like a very sound footing to work together on, and it didn't matter that it was a first time or it was just something. It was like we got locked in together and then figured it out. And I just want to thank you for trusting us with your vision, for trusting the students. They worked so hard, and I know that there's some of these boxes are actually entire classrooms of people that are listening on the classroom screen. But yeah, so I'll always be so grateful to you for all of those hours, 180. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the back pain.
And then a question for you is, I'm thinking about what Zola said about spatial histories and the Cotton Club and like bringing that to the forefront. And I wonder, in your sketches or as you're reading and listening to Baldwin's work or otherwise, if you are thinking about incorporating like beyond the portrait and some spatial or maybe architectural spaces. Like I know the Harlem brownstones that we had and the Istanbul landscape, and there's so much. You have such an interesting way of dealing with landscape too, that I just wonder if you think about that in your gallery work as well.
Oh, absolutely not, because I feel like I'm trash at it. I struggled with that brownstone and that Eiffel Tower. That's probably like 80 hours alone between the two of those. But I have been very curious about sculpture. I would like to get to a point where I have a bust paired with each painting that I make, because I think there's something visceral that happens when you have to engage with something in your physical space. Like I do, yes, I think there's a magic about making something on a flat surface look 3D, but there's something that I'm almost enamored with sculpture a little bit right now. And so I try and teach myself how to do that, like watching YouTube videos and whatnot. So like that's kind of, I think, where I'm headed next.
We have some great videos by our own Paula Rebson, who's a sculpture teacher at our school.
Link me, please.
They're on the YouTube. So
Okay.
we'll forward.
Let me write. You said Paula, right? Let me write that down because I'll forget.
Yeah.
And I also want to say, to your point, Kelda, I really this whole experience has been a little bit serendipitous. I felt like I was led to the artist call. I had just visited Seattle a few months before with my mom, and we were out there during your warm weather. And I said to my mom, I was like, I'm gonna do a mural out here. I'm gonna come back and do a mural out here, just casually, like talking trash. And then it happened. So I was like, I was supposed to be where I was at that moment to see that artist call. So yeah, definitely the whole thing feels serendipitous for me.
Laura.
Hi, Yvonne. I teach English here at North, and I just wanted to let you know how much I always teach James Baldwin in my composition classes, and it's just so amazing to be able to like take the students and say, like, look, here he is. Just to be able to have that. I think it just reinforces how much we value his work, and it just gives them a different way to kind of interact with him as an artist and as a writer. And so I just wanted you to know how much I and my students appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad that there's a tether there, like to kind of tap into.
Caroline.
Oh, thank you. Oh, these comments are so sweet. I'm feeling tender.
Hi, Yvonne. I wanted to tell you that there's at least one person on campus, and I'm sure that there's more than one that comes through every day to see your mural. And it's part of their like wellness walk. We're lucky that we have an art gallery on campus. So when people need to like get up and move and shake up their brain, they go and visit art on campus. And now yours is one of the places on tour. So you're bringing wellness in that way. I also wanted to tell you that we're working on a project in the library that hopefully will be happening next year, where we're going to have meditation and yoga in the library under the mirror. And so that just like stuck out to me about what you were saying about the beginning of your journey, like really committing to being a professional artist, and like your blood pressure and your physical wellness. And so now hopefully in the next calendar year, your mural is going to be a place where people pursue their mental and physical wellness. So maybe that will feel good for you to know that we're out here.
It's a little side of art therapy. I'll take it. Thank you.
And we also have an art and wellness walk, and your mural is part of that as well. So we're pairing with the wellness center on campus, and there are a bunch of different lunges and arm circles and things to do around maybe about a dozen pieces that we have on campus. So you are a part of that as well.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to, hi, Yvonne. I just wanted to say that I've attended many of these visiting artist lectures through the last 4 years or so. And this is probably one of the best I've gotten to be part of. I just love how thoughtful you were in kind of, I mean, Amanda said it better than I can, but just kind of taking it apart, like your whole process of first coming to the call and doing the application, but then, all that you went through both emotionally and as an artist, and sharing all those details with us and all of the resources as well, the books and stuff. I loved seeing the little TikTok videos or slideshows on the side. And then, I mean, how you put together each slide was beautiful. So the work is incredible, but I just really wanted to say that this was a great, great visiting artist lecture. So thank you so much for all your thought you put into it. Really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't say this enough, but it really is it's an honor to be able to share as an artist. But one thing that I do try to be clear about is the cost it takes to create, not just, fiscally in supplies, but the emotional cost, the energetic cost, the spiritual cost at times. And so when people are viewing my art, they're also viewing like all of these little parts of myself that I'm in the process of, growing or evolving or discarding. And so I think that's part of the beauty of art. So I'm glad that was translated.
Thank you so much. I think this is like a beautiful place to kind of sum everything up, finish. And so I really thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And we hope we hear more from you.
Oh, yes, ma'am, you will.
And if there's anything that we can do for you, like if we are, all of us here, if we are scrolling through Instagram and we see a call that fits you, we will send it right over to you. So just
yes, please.
Yeah, we'll be thinking of you. So really, really great. Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording. again, thank you.
Thank you.